Welcome! Today, we're diving deep into what is arguably the single most critical mandate in all of maritime law. If you're the kind of focused learner who loves breaking down really complex systems into clear, actionable ideas, well, you're in exactly the right place. We are going to deconstruct the navigation rules that literally keep the ocean safe, and we're zooming in specifically on the anatomy of Rule 5.
So think about this for a second. What is the single most important sentence keeping ships from colliding out there on the chaotic open sea? It's a serious question. I mean, the ocean is this incredibly unpredictable, multivariable environment, right? You've got massive commercial ships, tiny recreational boats, rapidly shifting weather, and absolutely no painted lanes or stoplights anywhere. The answer to this question isn't just some piece of dry legal code. It's the ultimate lifeline for mariners everywhere. It's the absolute bedrock of situational awareness.
Okay, let's dive right into the actual text of Rule 5, which is simply titled Lookout. It goes like this. Every vessel shall at all times maintain a proper lookout by sight and hearing, as well as by all available means appropriate in the prevailing circumstances and conditions, so as to make a full appraisal of the situation and of the risk of collision. Over the rest of this explainer, we're going to dissect this one single sentence, piece by piece, so we can understand exactly what is demanded of every single vessel on the water.
Let's isolate that very first core clause, maintain a proper lookout by sight and hearing. I want you to imagine the active, physical environment of the ocean. The rule explicitly demands a multisensory approach. It doesn't just say, casually glance out the window every now and then. No, it specifically mandates both sight and hearing. You have to be actively listening for fog signals, the rumble of other ships' engines, or warning blasts on a whistle, all while simultaneously scanning the horizon with your eyes. It is a highly engaged state of awareness.
Because looking out isn't just staring blankly into the blue distance. Say you're navigating near a buoy and there's a sailboat nearby. You are actively identifying varied, highly unpredictable traffic. A small sailboat moves so differently than a massive motorized vessel, right? It's completely subject to the whims of the wind. You have to constantly monitor these dynamic elements, figuring out not just that something is out there, but exactly what it is and how it's behaving.
But of course, our human senses have hard limits. And this brings us to the very real danger of restricted visibility. We're talking conditions like fog, mist, heavy rain, or snow. Relying solely on your eyes and ears becomes incredibly dangerous when a dense fog bank rolls in and drops your visual range from a few miles down to near zero in literally a matter of minutes. When the weather suddenly turns against you, your natural senses just aren't enough.
And that is exactly why the sentence continues with our next clause, as well as by all available means. Now, this represents a major shift in the rule. It pivots away from relying solely on natural human senses and introduces an absolute technological mandate. If you have the tools on board to help you see when your eyes cannot, or to see further than is humanly possible, you are legally obligated to use them.
So what does all available means actually look like in practice? Well, it means the proper use of operational radar. It means conducting long-range scanning to get early warnings and performing systematic radar plotting. This isn't just a casual suggestion to, glance at a screen when you feel like it. It's a proactive, required checklist of technological engagement to make sure you know exactly what is happening in the waters all around you.
Moving right along through our sentence, we hit the next critical condition, appropriate in the prevailing circumstances and conditions. The rules here are brilliantly drafted because they don't prescribe one rigid, unchangeable method for every single boat in every single situation. Instead, this clause demands adaptability. The specific, real-time circumstances and conditions dictate exactly how you apply your lookout.
Let's put that into perspective. The prevailing circumstances for a massive container ship are vastly different than for a small sailboat. A ship of this immense size requires highly specialized situational awareness. We're talking about massive stopping distances, often measured in miles, and huge visual blind spots directly in front of the bow. For this crew, maintaining a lookout appropriate to their circumstances means they have to rely heavily on early warnings and long-range radar. Because honestly, by the time they see a hazard with their naked eye, it might already be way too late to steer clear.
Now, a crucial warning here is that a proper lookout does not rely on assumptions made from scanty information. You can't just see a fuzzy little blip on a radar screen and arbitrarily assume, oh, it's nothing, or assume it's moving safely away from you. If your information is incomplete, you simply cannot make a definitive assumption about your safety. You have to dig deeper, use those other available means, and actually confirm what that scanty information represents out there in reality.
Which brings us to the grand finale of the sentence, the ultimate goal of all this effort, so as to make a full appraisal of the situation and of the risk of collision. This final clause explicitly ties all those sensory and technological actions, the seeing, the hearing, the radar scanning, the environmental adaptability, back to one single life-saving goal. You are required to do all of this so that you can accurately and fully determine if you are on a collision course.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how you make that full appraisal in real life. First, you detect the approaching vessel using all your available means. Second, you actively monitor its compass bearing. Now, if it's getting closer to you but its relative position, its bearing, isn't changing, a risk of collision absolutely exists. And the golden rule here is that if you are in any doubt whatsoever about that risk, you must legally deem that the risk is real and take action immediately.
But, of course, there are critical nuances to assessing that risk. For example, when you're approaching a really massive vessel, or when you're operating at a very close range, the sheer length of that ship might mean its bow is passing safely by you, but its stern is still swinging right into your path. A proper lookout requires understanding these dynamic elements, so you aren't tricked into a false sense of safety just because the bearing changed a bit.
Now, before we finish up, actually, let's pull back to one tiny two-word phrase hidden right near the beginning of Rule 5, at all times. This brings our focus right back to the absolute unyielding nature of the rule. There is never an excuse to drop this act of awareness. Not because you're tired, not because you're on a long, boring stretch of open water, and definitely not because the autopilot is engaged. The mandate to maintain this proper, full-spectrum lookout is a constant, unbending requirement.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. The sea is an incredibly chaotic place, yet this active, multi-sensory standard of rigorous awareness keeps it remarkably safe. If mariners have to apply this intense standard of looking out, using all available means, constantly adapting to circumstances, and never making assumptions on scanty information, how could applying a similar standard of deliberate awareness change the way you navigate your own daily commute, or even your everyday decisions? Think about it. Thanks for being focused, thanks for learning with us, and we'll catch you in the next explainer.